I checked my GPS for the fourth time, squinting through the downpour. We were deep in the Amazon, miles from any map trail, and the storm had forced us far off course. The canopy above was a blur of dripping leaves and tangled branches. "We need to find shelter," Anna called, her voice barely audible over the rain. I nodded, scanning the forest floor for anything that might keep us dry. That's when I saw it, a mound of earth, half swallowed by roots, with a strange, regular shape. Not a hill, not a boulder, something built. "Over here," I shouted, waving the team over. As we approached, the ground sloped away, revealing a wall of stone blocks, each one carved and fitted with impossible precision. The jungle had tried to reclaim it, but the lines were too straight, too deliberate. Anna brushed mud from a corner, exposing a symbol, spirals, interlocked, almost hypnotic. "This isn't on any map," she whispered. I knelt beside Anna, tracing the spiral with my gloved finger. The stone was cold, slick with rain, but the carving was sharp, untouched by centuries of weather. "This is old," I said, more to myself than anyone else, older than anything we've seen out here. Miguel, our botanist, circled the structure, his boots sinking into the sodden earth. "There's more on this side," he called. I followed, heart pounding. The wall curved, forming a partial ring, and just beyond it, the ground had collapsed inward, revealing a dark, yawning gap. We gathered at the edge, peering down. The opening was framed by more stonework, steps descending into blackness. The air that rose from below was cool and dry, untouched by the storm. Anna shone her flashlight down the step. The beam caught on something metallic, rusted, ancient, half buried in the silt. "Should we go in?" she asked, voice trembling. I hesitated, but curiosity won. We document everything. No one goes alone. We started down, one careful step at a time. The steps were slick with moss and mud, but the deeper we went, the drier the air became. The sound of the storm faded behind us, replaced by a heavy, expectant silence. My flashlight beam danced across the walls, more carvings, geometric patterns, and strange, looping symbols that seemed to shift in the shadows. Miguel paused, kneeling to examine a pile of debris. He brushed away dirt to reveal pottery shards, their surfaces etched with the same spirals as above. "This isn't just a ruin," he murmured. "People lived here, or something did." The passage opened into a wide chamber. The ceiling arched overhead, supported by pillars carved to resemble twisted vines. In the center, a stone platform rose from the floor, surrounded by a shallow trench filled with blackened, brittle material. Anna crouched to inspect it, frowning. "Charcoal? Or something else?" I circled the platform, noticing the way the trench formed a perfect ring. "A barrier," I said quietly. But to keep what in or out, a faint, cold draft brushed my face, carrying a scent of earth and something older. Anna's flashlight flickered as she moved along the edge of the platform. The carvings here were different, figures with elongated limbs, faces hidden behind masks, all standing in a circle, arms raised toward the center. At their feet, the spiral motif repeated, tighter and tighter, until it vanished into a single point. Miguel ran his hand over the brittle material in the trench. "It's not just charcoal. There's something mixed in, resin maybe. It's sticky." He scraped a sample into a vial, his brow furrowed. "Why seal a ring like this?" I stepped onto the platform, feeling the stone vibrate faintly beneath my boots. The sensation was subtle, almost like a heartbeat pulsing through the floor. I knelt, pressing my palm flat. The vibration grew stronger, rhythmic, as if something deep below was moving, alive. Anna's voice was barely a whisper. "Do you hear that?" We all froze, listening. From somewhere beneath the stone, a low, wet scraping sound echoed up through the darkness, growing louder with every passing second. The sound was unmistakable, something massive shifting below, dragging itself through unseen tunnels. I felt the vibration in my bones, a slow, relentless rhythm that seemed to sync with my own heartbeat. Anna backed away from the platform, her eyes wide. "We shouldn't be here," she whispered. Miguel shone his light into a narrow passage branching off from the chamber. The walls here were lined with more of that blackened resin, sealing cracks and doorways. "They tried to keep something down here," he said, voice trembling. "Not just hidden, contained." A sudden gust of cold air swept through the chamber, carrying with it a metallic tang, sharp and bitter. The flame of Anna's lighter, which she'd flicked on to test the air, guttered and died. The darkness pressed in, thick and suffocated. I forced myself to speak, my voice barely steady. "We need to document this and get out, now." But as I turned back toward the stairs, a deep, guttural thud echoed from below. The platform shuddered. The spiral carvings seemed to twist in the beam of my flashlight, as if warning us, "Do not go deeper." Miguel's breath caught as the thudding below grew louder, each impact sending a tremor through the chamber floor. Anna's hand found my arm, her grip tight. "Something's moving," she said, her voice barely more than a breath. I swept my light across the chamber, searching for another exit. The only other passage was half blocked by a fallen slab, but beyond it, I glimpsed more stone steps descending into darkness. The resin seals along the walls here were cracked, as if something had pressed against them from the other side. "We need to leave," Miguel urged, but curiosity gnawed at me. I edged closer to the blocked passage, shining my light through the gap. The air that drifted out was colder, tinged with that same metallic scent. On the far wall, I saw a mural, figures clustered around a pit, pouring black resin into the opening, their faces turned away. A sudden, wet scraping echoed up the steps. The sound was closer now, urgent, hungry. Anna pulled me back. "We have to go, now." But as we turned, the platform behind us began to crack, a thin line splitting the spiral in two. The crack widened with a slow, grinding sound, dust sifting down from the ceiling. I stumbled back, heart hammering, as the spiral split open. From the darkness below, a pale, segmented shape pressed upward, slick and glistening, forcing its way through the gap. Anna gasped, stumbling against the wall. Miguel dropped his sample vial, glass shattering on stone. The thing below flexed, its rings undulating, testing the barrier of resin and charcoal. For a moment, it seemed to hesitate, as if sensing the weakened seal. I grabbed Anna's arm, pulling her toward the stair. "Move!" Miguel was already scrambling up, boots slipping on the wet stone. The platform shuddered again, the crack spreading, resin hissing as it melted under the pressure. We reached the base of the stairs just as the chamber filled with a deep guttural moan, a sound that vibrated through the stone and into my chest. I risked one last glance back. The spiral was gone, replaced by a gaping wound in the floor, and from its depth something ancient and hungry was waking. We scrambled up the steps, boots slipping on moss and mud, the sound of that thing below echoing after us. The air grew colder, sharper, as if the jungle itself was recoiling from what we'd disturbed. Anna's flashlight beam jittered wildly across the walls, catching glimpses of more murals, figures fleeing, faces twisted in terror. Black resin poured desperately into cracks. Miguel reached the top first, hauling himself out into the rain-soaked clearing. I pushed Anna up after him, then clambered out, my hands shaking. The storm had eased, but the forest was eerily silent. No birds, no insects, just the distant rumble of thunder and the pounding of my own heart. Behind us, the ground trembled. A muffled roar rose from the hidden chamber, and a plume of cold, fetid air burst from the opening, scattering leaves and sending a shiver through the trees. For a moment, I thought I saw movement in the shadows below, pale rings twisting, searching for a way out. Anna collapsed to her knees, gasping, "We have to warn someone. This place, it was never meant to be found." I stared at the ruined entrance, the spiral symbol still faintly visible in the mud, and realized we'd only just begun to understand what the city was built to contain. We staggered away from the entrance, not daring to look back. The jungle pressed in around us, every shadow suddenly menacing, every root and vine a potential snare. Miguel fumbled with the radio, his hands slick with rain and fear. "Base, this is Team Delta. We need immediate extraction. Do you copy?" Static hissed in reply, the storm still choking the signal. Anna wiped mud from her face, her eyes wide and haunted. What if it gets out? What if the rain breaks more of those seals? I didn't have an answer. I could still feel the vibration in the earth beneath my boot, a slow, relentless pulse that seemed to follow us as we moved deeper into the forest. We found a patch of higher ground and huddled beneath a fallen tree, trying to catch our breath. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the air was thick with the scent of wet earth and something metallic, unnatural. Miguel stared at the sample vial he'd managed to save, the sticky black resin clinging to the glass. "They built the city to keep it buried," he whispered, "and we just opened the door." Thunder rolled overhead, and somewhere behind us, the jungle fell silent. We waited in the shelter of the fallen tree, listening for any sign that the thing below had followed us. The jungle was still unnaturally quiet. I checked my GPS, no signal. The radio spat, only static. Anna huddled close, shivering despite the humid air. "We can't just leave it," she said. "If the rains keep coming, the whole site could collapse. That thing could get out." Miguel stared at the resin sample, then at the ruined entrance. "There must be a way to reseal it. The murals showed them pouring resin, using fire. Maybe we can do the same." I looked at our supplies, a half-empty can of fuel, a few torches, the resin Miguel had collected. It wasn't much, but it was all we had. "We'll have to go back," I said, my voice barely steady. "We can try to seal the opening, at least slow it down." Anna's eyes widened, but she nodded. "We can't let it reach the surface." We moved quickly, retracing our step through the dripping undergrowth. The entrance was already half filled with mud and debris, but the crack in the platform below was wider now, the spiral almost erased. The air that rose from the gap was colder, sharper, and the sound of movement below was louder, impatient. Miguel poured the resin around the edges of the opening, his hands shaking. I doused a rag with fuel, wrapped it around a stick, and lit it. The flame flared bright, casting wild shadows on the stone. Anna stood watch, her eyes fixed on the darkness below. As Miguel spread the resin, I pressed the torch to it. The resin caught, burning with a thick, acrid smoke. The flames licked along the crack, sealing it with a bubbling, blackened crust. For a moment, the vibrations below grew frantic, the thing pressing hard against the barrier. The ground trembled, and a pale segment forced its way up, just inches from my boot. I shoved the torch at it, the heat and smoke driving it back. The segment recoiled, disappearing into the depths with a wet, angry hiss. The resin hardened, sealing the crack for now. We stumbled back, coughing, eyes streaming from the smoke. The jungle seemed to exhale, the oppressive silence lifting just a little. Anna collapsed to her knees, sobbing with relief. Miguel slumped beside her, clutching the empty resin vial. I looked at the ruined entrance, the blackened spiral barely visible beneath the new seal. It's not gone, I said quietly, just trapped. Like before. Miguel nodded. We need to warn the others. No one can come here again. As we made our way back through the forest, the rain finally stopped. The birds began to call again, tentative at first, then louder. The jungle was waking up, but I knew the thing below was only sleeping, waiting for the next storm, the next careless explorer. We reached a ridge and looked back one last time. The lost city was hidden once more, swallowed by the green, but I could still feel the spiral's pull, a warning echoing in my mind. Some things are meant to stay buried. We hiked for hours, pushing through tangled vines and mud until the forest finally thinned and the signal bars flickered back on my GPS. Miguel managed to reach base on the radio, his voice hoarse as he relayed our coordinates and a garbled warning about the site. Rescue was on its way. As we waited in a small clearing, Anna sat apart, staring at the resin-stained sample vial in her hand. The jungle felt lighter, almost normal, but I couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. I replayed the murals in my mind, the spirals, the masked figures, the desperate attempts to contain what lay beneath. The helicopter arrived at dusk, its blades scattering leaves and sending a rush of wind through the tree. The rescue team hustled us aboard, their questions a blur. I clutched my notebook, determined to make sure no one ever returned to that place. As we lifted off, I glanced down at the jungle canopy. The entrance was gone, hidden beneath fresh mud and fallen branches. For a moment, I allowed myself to believe we'd done enough, but as the helicopter banked north, Anna's voice broke the silence. Did you hear that? I turned. She was staring at the sample vial, her hands trembling. Inside, the black resin was bubbling, tiny air pockets rising and bursting in slow, steady pulses. Miguel leaned closer, frowning. It's reacting to something. Maybe the pressure changed, but I saw it then, a hairline crack running down the side of the glass, widening as the resin ripped and flexed. The vial grew hot in Anna's palm. She yelped, dropping it to the floor of the helicopter. The resin oozed out, spreading in a thin, black line across the metal. It pulsed as if alive, and the same cold, metallic scent filled the cabin. The rescue team stared, confused, as the resin crept toward the drainage grate beneath our feet. I met Anna's eyes, horror dawning in both of us at the same time. We hadn't just disturbed what was buried, we'd brought a piece of it with us. The helicopter's engine shuddered. Below, the endless green of the Amazon waited, ancient and patient, as the spiral began again.